Christian University, and it is truly an honor for me to be the Masters of Ceremony for today's event. Now, before all else, following to Petra Christian University's value, I will begin this event with a prayer. But every one of you is invited to raise your religious beliefs into prayer. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for gathering us here healthily and happily. Today we gather here for this international seminar. Please bless all of the speakers, all of the guests, all of the participants so that we can follow through the seminar well and that we can comprehend all of the insights given for it to be useful in our daily lives. Thank you, Lord. In your name we have prayed. Amen. And now, representing Petra Christian University's team, I would like to extend our greetings to all of the participants and colleagues from the U.S. Consulate General Surabaya, Mr. Joshua Shen as the Public Affairs Officer, who is present with us on the venue, as well as Mr. Daria M. Roche as the Foreign Affairs Officers, Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, who is joining us through the online platform. Your presence is truly significant to us, and we hope that this event will be a valuable moment in strengthening the existing collaborations between the two parties. We would also like to welcome our Vice Rector on Human Resources of Petra Christian University, Mr. Agustoli, as well as our honorable guests, the Regional Coordinator of Mafindo and team, the Head of the Indonesian Higher Education Library Forum of East Java, the personals from Public Library, and the Head Librarian of 10 November Institute of Technology, as well as other respected head librarians. Once again, welcome to this very event. Now, without further ado, to officially commence the long-awaited seminar, let us proceed with the opening remarks. To begin, please join me in welcoming Mr. Joshua Shin from the U.S. Consulate General of Surabaya. So, Mr. Joshua, the time is yours.
Thank you all for joining us today. We're very excited at the U.S. Consulate to work again with Petra Christian University here in Surabaya, one of our leading institutions, especially on, one of our leading institutions here in Indonesia, especially on visual arts, business, and other technology themes. And that's why this particular subject, I think a lot of us have been thinking about for a while, not just AI and its impact on education, but also on the issue of disinformation. We all know that AI can bring a lot of benefits. We are not sure, especially as educator, how to integrate it into our education. I know students everywhere are taking shortcuts, not just students, office workers, government officials, everyone. And it's not wrong to use AI to do mundane tasks that you could spend your time doing other things. But there's also a challenge with it. We don't want to take away original thought, and we don't want to encourage plagiarism. And one of the things that we all have to be careful of is AI. Does it help spread disinformation? Does it help spread misinformation? Now, you don't need AI to have disinformation or misinformation. We know it's out there. So it's not a fault we just blame on AI. But AI may be part of the solution in most its ability for machine learning, pattern recognition, and other processes that it could help recognize sources of fake information. So we know AI can be a solution. We also want to live in a society, a free society, where we don't want to have one body be the arbiter of truth, right? It's very dangerous in the age of disinformation to become who gets to decide what is disinformation. And that is also a challenge. AI could be a benefit, because what is something that we don't believe in the United States is that the US government should not be the arbiter of disinformation. That's dangerous. It's a power that's easily abused. One of the things about the United States, I think what's the amazing thing about our Constitution is essentially our founding fathers believed one thing, that power will corrupt the powerful. And so they were trying to figure out how to stop the powerful from being able to use their power. They have all these checks and balances. They guarantee the freedom of the press. So in this age of disinformation, we all know the challenges of democracy that can happen when there's, not just innocent misinformation, but actually malicious disinformation, whether it is to spur like violence between two groups of people, ethnic groups or racial groups or political beliefs, or it's to steal money or things like that, or to do other crimes. So how do we meet the challenges with AI? I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm very happy to recruit through the State Department, Ms. Evanna Hu, who is an expert. She's with the Atlanta Council. I'll let you tell about her bio more. But another just interesting side note is I actually worked with her before recruiting this on an issue that we both care about as well. So I'm very excited to see her today and listen to her presentation. I'm so grateful, the Vice Rector and all of the staff here at Petra Christian University for leaning forward, being innovative during this few days of seminars and conferences on what are the trends in technology and education in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Mr. Joshua for the amazing, inspiring remarks. And although I'm not an expert in this field as well, I can assure that in this educational era of artificial intelligence, we do use ChatGPT in our daily lives encounters, especially in college matters. All right, after that, we still have one more important person to join us and give the opening remarks. So please welcome with me to the stage, Mr. Agus Tolly as our Vice Rector of Human Resource of Petra Christian University. Please, to Mr. Agus Tolly, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, our distinguished guests and participants. Yeah, also good evening, I think, yeah, for our speaker, yeah, from the United States. Today, please allow me to deliver my speech on behalf of Director of Petra Christian University, because today Pak Rektor and Ibu Vice Rector for Academic Affairs were in Sumba, yeah, East Nusa Tenggara. Yeah, they attend community outreach program, yeah, together with an annual meeting with the Association of Indonesian Christian Universities, yeah, in Sumba. Okay. First of all, as part of PCU family, yeah, I would like to express my appreciation to the U.S. Consulate General Surabaya, yeah, for making this hybrid seminar a reality. Yeah, present here. Yeah, thank you, Pak Joshua Sen. Yeah, Public Relation of U.S. Consulate General, Ibu Esti. Yeah, thank you for being here, Pak Pugu. Yeah, thanks also. Yeah, for being here, Bapak Christian Simanulang. Okay, thank you, Horas Pak. Yeah. We also want to thank Miss Daria M. Roche, yeah, the Foreign Affairs Officer, Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs, U.S. Department of State, who present online for today. As mentioned by Pak Joshua, yeah, I think not only in the university, yeah, we have what should I say, yeah, AI give us benefit, but also give us challenge, yeah, especially for me as the lecturer, yeah, for me as the lecturer, how can I treat my student who use AI, yeah, when they present their assignment or something like that, yeah. I don't want to disallow them to use the AI, but that's challenge for me. How can I give grade or any benefit for them who use AI or not use AI. Yeah, but also the topic for today is also disinformation. Yeah, how can we use AI in order to face a challenging issues in pemilu, ya, general election for the next year. Okay, many thanks to the speakers for the seminar. Miss Evanna Hu join us online, ya. Okay, thank you. Also Bu Cahya from Mavindo, thank you Bu. Bu Joan attending here. Oh, thank you Bu Joan, yeah, for attending here and become our speaker. Yeah, I hope we can elaborate. Yeah, we can discuss about this issue. Yeah, in order to face the challenging issues in education, yeah, politics, or any issues in our country. Okay. Finally, thank you Pak Aditya, yeah, Pak AN or Pak Liao Tongchie. He became the one-stop contributor, one-stop servant for us. He is the initiator, moderator, and committee for this seminar. Yeah. Okay, enjoy the seminar and God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. Agustoli, for the splendid foreword. Now, okay, please, I'm so sorry, but please, I have to invite Mr. Agustoli once again to the stage. Also, Mr. Joshua Shen, as we're going to have a quick photo session. Hence, we're going to invite Mrs. Dian Wulandari as the representative of the Petra Christian University's team and the head of library of Petra Christian University. Thank you very much. Please give a round of applause. Thank you, sir. Okay, so diving into the event, I would like to convey some important information that participants ought to know before we proceed to the rest of the seminars. Please be apprised of the event's preceding comments that the initial sessions will be held fully in English with by no means any formal language interpretations. Similarly, the second and the third sessions will be held fully in Bahasa, representing the same terms. If by any chance during the process of the events, the on-site participants wish to go to the toilet, the nearest one is reachable just after a right turn once you exited the room. In case of emergency, please exit the building immediately by proceeding down the stairs and meeting up at the main field area. Now, Petra Christian University is proudly a non-smoking campus. Hence, please be notified that any act promoting the notion otherwise are not permitted surrounding the campus area. Later on at the end of the sessions, a QR code will be displayed on the screen for the on-site participants, or for the online participants, a link will be given through the Zoom chat feature by the committees. Participants are encouraged to access the materials if the certificates as proof of participation is demanded. And lastly, another photo session for the entire participants will be held after the session 1 is finished. Hence, please be expected to turn your cameras on for the online participants once it is announced. With that being said, it is finally time for us to jump right into our highlights of the events. Of course, the wonderful upcoming talk shows. And to guide us along, we have invited one very experienced moderator. Without any longer, please welcome with me to the stage, Mr. Aditya Nugraha, the Head of Excellence in Learning and Teaching Center of Petra Christian University.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Is my voice clear enough for the online participants? Can you give me a sign? Raising your hand, perhaps? Yes, thank you. Okay. Because time is very tight, Evanna has to leave at 10:30, so we should immediately introduce her. Okay, as the MC explained that the first session will be held entirely in English, but for reading the CV from Evanna Hu, I would like to ask permission to use Bahasa Indonesia and English at the same time, so as to give more grasp on the on her credential. So Evanna Hu is the CEO of Omelas, an open source intelligence company that uses AI to monitor and detect influence operations. In the Indonesian version, Evanna Hu adalah CEO dari Omelas, sebuah perusahaan yang bergerak di bidang intelligence yang bersifat open source dengan memanfaatkan artificial intelligence untuk memantau dan mendeteksi influence operation. What is influence operation? Many of you might not be familiar with this term. Influence operation is defined by Facebook or Meta as, quote, coordinated efforts to manipulate or corrupt public debate for strategic goal. I took this definition from the threat report, the State of Influence Operation 2017 to 2020. Influence operation oleh Facebook didefinisikan sebagai, dalam tanda kutip, upaya terkoordinasi untuk memanipulasi perdebatan publik untuk mencapai tujuan strategik tertentu. Ini diambil dari laporan dari Facebook tahun 2017-2020. Evanna Hu is also the Senior Advisor for Digital Security at the International Republic Institute and a non-resident fellow at Atlantic Council, Scowcroft Center for Strategic and Security. She is an expert in state and non-state sponsored influence operations, messaging, and strategic communication, having worked in the Middle East and Africa, including 6 years in Gaza Strip, Kenya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Tunisia, Jordan, Lebanon, and Turki. Evanna Hu juga adalah seorang senior advisor untuk bidang keamanan digital dari Institut Republik Internasional dan seorang peneliti senior di Atlantic Council, khususnya di Scowcroft Center for Strategic and Security. Beliau adalah seorang ahli dalam topik tentang influence operation, penyampaian pesan dan komunikasi strategik oleh masyarakat sipil maupun aktor pemerintah. Beliau memiliki pengalaman di berbagai negara di Timur Tengah dan Afrika, termasuk pengalaman beliau selama 6 tahun di jalur Gaza, Kenya, Irak, Afghanistan, Ukraina, Tunisia, Jordan, Lebanon, dan Turki. Jangan lupa Turki sekarang namanya menjadi Turki ya. She has briefed multiple national heads of intelligence and cabinet level officials on the intersection of emerging technology and national security. Her public-facing work has been published and covered by the likes of BBC, Defense One, Foreign Policy, Lawfare, The National Review, Wall Street Journal, The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, Voice of America, etc. Her nonprofit works include as the board chairman of the nonprofit Recoded, which gives economic livelihood by teaching digital skills to vulnerable populations and placing them into jobs in 7 MENA country or Middle East and North Africa. Evanna Hu juga telah menjadi penasihat dari berbagai kepala bagian intelligence dan para menteri pemerintah sejumlah negara. Karya-karyanya telah dipublikasikan dan diliput oleh BBC, Defense One, Foreign Policy, Lawfare, National Review, Wall Street Journal, Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, Voice of America, dan lain-lain. Kontribusi non-profitnya termasuk menjadi board of chairman di organisasi non-profit yang dinamakan Recoded, yang juga telah berjasa meningkatkan taraf perekonomian masyarakat melalui keterampilan literasi digital bagi segmen masyarakat yang termarginalkan, dengan cara menempatkan mereka di berbagai lowongan kerja di 7 negara MENA, Middle East dan North Africa, di Timur Tengah dan negara Afrika Utara. Ya, okay, that's quite extensive credential for Evanna Hu. So without further ado, I will give the time to you. Evanna will be covering the topic of AI and disinformation in general. She will be giving global perspective on the issue, which I'm sure she will be able to talk a lot based on her credential. Time is yours, Evanna.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to the U.S. Consulate as well as Petra Christian University for organizing this and inviting me. So I am here to talk about AI.
Problem with the sound.
Oh, can you hear me?
Could you wait for a moment? Evanna, we cannot hear you yet.
Okay.
We might need to do some checking. Testing.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Evanna, please keep talking. Just for
Keep talking.
a sound test.
Okay. Okay. Let me know when you can hear me. Can you hear me now? Okay. I think you're on mute, so I can't hear you.
Just popping in to say that the online participants can hear you very clearly.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Thanks for the confirmation of the participants. I can see all the comments now. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was informed that your voice can be heard by the online participants, but not by us here on site. So we are working on the equipment right now. So my apology for this. It works fine this morning when we did the tryout. Check. Evanna, can you say something? Check. Is that Evanna's voice? Okay. Yes, sorry, Evanna, can you say something now? Testing, Evanna, can you hear me? Testing, Evanna. Peserta yang online bisa dengar suara saya?
Bisa, Pak.
Bisa, oke.
Bisa, Pak.
Iya. Oh, okay. Evanna, can you say something now? Hello? It seems that Evanna is freeze. Oh, okay. Now it's going live again now for Evanna. Excuse me, Evanna, can you say something?
Yeah.
Ah,
Can you hear me
okay.
now?
Is that you?
Can you hear me? Testing.
Okay. Yes, I think we can hear you now. Okay, so sorry about the delay. Please proceed. Ya, mungkin sambil mengisi waktu ya, saya sampaikan secara garis besar. Jadi sesi pertama oleh Evanna ini lebih terkait kepada overview terkait AI and disinformation, jadi global perspektif, karena pengalaman beliau banyak sekali ya, termasuk beliau juga sering memberikan ceramah di NATO ya, North Atlantic Treaty Organization dan sebagainya. Lalu sesi kedua nanti dari Mavindo, Masyarakat Anti Fitnah Indonesia, yang akan mengkontekstualisasikan misinformasi dan AI ini disinformasi dalam konteks Indonesia, khususnya menjelang pemilu nanti ya. Yang ketiga dari Ibu Joen, dosen dari UK Petra, akan bicara tentang peran dari media literasi dan media monitoring dalam memerangi disinformasi. Jadi kita istilahnya siap-siap dulu sebelum terjadi, karena nanti dari Mavindo juga akan memperkenalkan konsep bukan debunking tapi pre-bunking gitu ya. Oke, semoga sudah bisa connect kembali. Ini Evannanya. Sudah. Oke, sudah. Terima. Oke, welcome back Evanna. Please proceed.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I am going to share my screen for the presentation. But thank you so much for organizing this U.S. consulate as well as Petra Christian University. I'm really looking forward to doing this presentation with you. So before we get started, and I know that we covered a little bit of this in the initial remarks, but I just want to start by talking about what is actually artificial intelligence. And so AI is use of computer systems to carry out tasks previously requiring human intelligence, cognition, or reasoning. And it's comprised of different types of algorithms, most notably machine learning, which is something I'm sure you have heard a lot about. Of the adoption of AI now, it has actually been around since the 1960s. We have something called the four AI winters because of how long AI has actually existed. A subset of AI is called generative AI, and that is basically a type of AI that generate outputs which resemble human created content, be it text, images, graphics, music, computer code, etc. The most popular one that I'm sure everyone has heard of is Chat GPT, which is created by the nonprofit OpenAI, right? And I'm sure a lot of you guys have played around with it. And then for images, there's Dolly, Midjourney, etc. that basically allows you to create your own images based on prompts that you can enter. What AI is not, because we get a lot of these, science fiction images of what AI should be and should not. But as of right now, AI is basically created with the human in the loop, meaning that AI right now cannot make decisions on their own. And they actually need a user to be there to have the final say. We also get, can we have an emotional or sentient AI? Basically means, can an AI actually feel? Right? And as of right now, AI cannot feel anything. They don't have emotions. Machine learning algorithms, and where a lot of people say, oh my gosh, we want to make sure that we're using AI. But when we actually run tests, we actually realize that the standard algorithms out there are actually a lot better. And so AI right now is still not as developed as we would like it to be. And the fourth point right now is really that AI has the same human biases and the wrong assumptions, because humans, we're the ones who are creating the AI, which means that unintentionally our AI sometimes will also reflect the bad societal norms that we have. So in a lot of places around the world, including the US, the initial versions of AI online actually are very well known to be racist or sexist. And that's just because the training data sets that we're feeding it fundamentally come with those human biases. A good example of this is a software company called Proctorate AI. Many of you you're at the university, right? And so during COVID, it was adopted by multiple educational institutions around the world because they wanted teachers to make sure that students are not online taking the exams, but at the same time, they're Googling their answers on their phones, or they're just using another screen. So what the company did was they actually created so basically when you're taking the exam, you have to turn on your camera, and then the software followed your eye pattern to make sure that it's not wandering around, because that's how they know that you're cheating. So that was adopted by places like Harvard and MIT and a lot of these very prominent universities. But the problem was that the people who created the software, the algorithm, they were light-skinned people. And camera and a video, sometimes, especially if you're taking the exam in a darker place, it could not actually track the eyes, right? So you have these lawsuits now of students actually complaining that they got a worse grade because in order for their eyes to be tracked by the software, they basically had to have 3 spotlights on them at all times. They had to make sure that their face was really close to the camera, which obviously impacted their performance. And so that's an example of it had the same human biases and the exclusivity because of people who were creating it. And so we also have to understand the limitations of AI. And so this is a prompt that I entered into 3 different generative AI. And it basically says the prompt was old man head on juicy cheeseburger, hike with depth, just for fun. But this is to basically show you that even though it is exactly the same prompt, 3 very different AI systems create a very different results, right? Which goes back to the point about accuracy. If you're using AI for medical purposes, for deciding who gets a credit card and who does not, what does that actually say about having that human to make sure that it's actually that a human can actually say that this is the right decision and that I'm not accidentally ruining someone's lives because of this, right? Another limitation is, so this is an OT that I was using, but I basically asked ChatGPT to write me a paragraph on what's going on in Pakistan right now, especially gearing up for the upcoming election. And it basically said, as a in September of 2021, that is the current events that are going on. And something else that a lot of these systems are currently doing is something we call hallucinations. So basically, when the AI system does not know the answer, it starts to make up stuff, which is misinformation and fake news. And this is where you get in trouble, because if you're not already an expert in the field and you're using an AI to, let's say, do your homework or to answer a question for someone, right? You have no way of fact checking that what it is telling you is actually correct. So that's just another limitation to keep in mind when you're using AI. All right, so I mentioned misinformation. I'm gonna kind of move on right now to the definition of mis or disinformation and how it's different. So misinformation is basically fake news, if we want to call it that, but with a good intent, right? So it could be that you're telling your best friend something, but then you accidentally told them the right. Disinformation is bad information with the intent to cheat or to deceive someone. And so typically in this field, we say that there are 7 types of mis or disinformation. So the first is satire or parody. So this is, it's not intent to cause harm, but someone could read the headline and think that it's actually true when it's actually just a joke. The second is misleading content. Third is imposter. So again, someone hacking into else, especially when it's level of credibility and usually information. The fourth is typically like the pure example of disinformation. And then the fifth is false connection. So when headlines or visuals or captions don't think we're back now. All right, so let's off with false connections. So typically this is what happens with clickbait articles where the title does not actually match the content. And then the fifth is false context. This is, we'll go over this a little bit later, but they're basically is when genuine content is shared with the false contextual information. And then finally, we have the manipulated content, which is when genuine information or imagery is manipulated to deceive. Both of those are called shallow fakes and then deep fakes. So this is a good example of pure disinformation. This was put out on Twitter by the CEO of a nonprofit that wanted to prove to the population and to the US government that just the harm of generative AI. And so he basically took pictures, you know, and ran them through, I think that this was through Midjourney, of Trump being arrested. Trump has not been arrested. But this spread like wildfire. In the first hour alone on Twitter, it had received 3 million engagements, which is significant. And so this is something that, you know, it is definitely created with the intent to deceive. So this is a good example of a deep fake. This is a great example of a shallow fake. And so what happened was that the Burmese military junta took a picture from a conflict actually in Bangladesh and said, look what they're doing to our Buddhist brothers and sisters, obviously trying to blame the Rohingya Muslims on perpetrating a lot of these atrocious crimes, when in fact that had never actually happened. They had just taken a photo from another conflict and passed it off as a way of blaming a minority population. So the picture itself is real, the context behind it is false. So that's a shallow fake. All right, so we just talked about how generative AI can be used to spread disinformation, to create disinformation. And now we're going to talk about how AI can be used to actually spread disinformation. So this is a picture of botnets online. And so there are a bunch of ways that you can actually make sure that the disinformation that you want to put out, they're clearly marked. But a lot of times you can actually create a bunch of fake accounts to have them engage with the original content and to make it spread out, right? So that's what we call botnets. These accounts don't really have to have a lot of activities on them prior to it. You can create an algorithm to create multiple bots at the same time, and that's what we call a troll farm. But there are also other ways of doing it, which is you can also hack into someone who already has 20 million followers, for example, and post content by through their channels, which then gets spread organically, right? Another way is you can also make a lot of these fake accounts. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of Finsta accounts, which are fake Insta accounts, which people can use to stalk their crush or whatever it is, but it's not under their genuine persona online. And so, one person can basically run a whole bunch of these. And that's also really important when we talk about the solutions, because typically we can actually look at the timestamps, we can look at your writing styles, etc., to actually say it is with 70% probability, because when they're posting, A, they're posting in typically the same time zone. Also, B, there's seems like there's, all the posts by these 20 accounts are only separated by about a minute, which means that, which is sufficient enough time for someone to use their multiple devices and to go back and forth among these accounts. Right? So AI can be used to automate a lot of that work to spread the disinformation, which is talking about the spread of disinformation. And we know that there's a lot of disinformation out there. The question is always becomes, okay, great, you can send out all the disinformation, but ultimately, has it actually been effective? Like, are people actually believing in it? And so the metrics of effectiveness is what we're talking about here. Are people engaging with it? Do they actually believe it? Or, the intent of typically running a disinformation campaign is to get someone to either change their behaviors or their attitude, or to make them not think about something, right? So it's also to just measure that when a lot of the engagements are happening online. And how can you actually draw that correlation between what people are reading online and their offline behavior? And oftentimes, we don't really see that immediate effect right away. A lot of times it will take months or years. So some of the challenges that we actually see in the space of AI and disinformation. The first is obviously attribution. So who is actually saying this content, whether that's misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, or just real news out there, right? And it's increasingly very hard to actually see who is the original source. And now with the adoption of generative AI, it is much harder to make sure that that person actually gets the credibility and also get the credits, especially when it comes in, right? The second challenge is really on fact checking. So 7 in 10 people globally worry about fake news being used as a weapon. But when we're going online, we sometimes have to just throw a look at everything with skepticism. And where does that actually leave us? And ultimately, how much do we actually trust, the internet of these brands, right? And this is where brand reputation becomes a really important metric that we can use to say, okay, if I'm reading something like the BBC, it's probably going to be how it reached me. So how can I actually use my critical thinking skills to know that I'm reading something that doesn't seem quite right, and I need to probably double check or triple check. The third challenge is cybersecurity concerns. And so this is where we're talking about cybersecurity concerns of AI, right? Everything can be hacked, not because of any technical skills, but quite honestly, the weakest link is always the human. Someone's always going to not change their password from password where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then they can get right in and change how an AI system can function without someone realizing until it's too late. Another way is something we consider as data poisoning. So this is where you actually change the training data to impact the creation of the algorithms. And finally, it's about the lack of standards and the norms that we have internationally around AI governance, as well as ethics, and what we consider as disinformation. What Turkey considers as disinformation, for example, could be very different than what is considered disinformation in Sweden. Right, and we're seeing that play out on the global political stage right now. And so, how can we actually have a global strategy if such a thing exists? And there are multiple countries that are vying for this leadership position right now. So there's China, the EU just passed their AI Act, and then you Russia trying to look at that we actually want to develop. And this brings me to the final concept of this seminar, which is the notion of RAI, which is responsible AI. A lot of people, especially AI to nuclear weapons, right, if unchecked. And so we don't want to take the same route that we did with the nuclear weapons in terms of regulating it. We want to think about it when it's still relatively early in its development and adoption. So responsible AI is a notion that was originally started by actually nonprofits and big tech companies like Microsoft. And it has been now more adopted by various governments. And it's basically saying we care about ethical AI, secure AI. We want to make sure that the machine learning algorithms, instead of being this black box that we can't audit and look into, we want transparency. And we also want to make sure that principles right now especially the one that I just put on the right of the screen. Might be, yeah, your right of the screen. So that was actually taken from the Microsoft website. And so a lot of people, so obviously we all agree on the principles. And now how do we actually
Thank you. Thank you, Evanna. Sometimes we lose your voice, but yeah, hopefully the question and answer session will be able to clear some questions from the audience. Thank you again for your presentation. For the audience, either on site or online, if you want to ask question, could you raise your hand, and in the Zoom, could you use the reaction button, or you can also type in the chat. My colleague will help me to convey the questions to my laptop. Any from the on-site audience, any questions? No? Okay, Pak Joshua. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation, Evanna, and good to see you again. I guess my question is about, we know there are different kinds of things that may be considered disinformation, and some tools, including AI tools, to expose it or to shut it down. My question is how you would compare Twitter's community notes versus some other method where maybe it was just taken down by Facebook or Twitter in the past.
So there are a couple of different initiatives that are working on that right now. The example that they're using is what they used to use for terrorist content. So back then, what they did was, if one of the 13 major platforms flagged a piece of terrorist content, they put a hash behind that content, whether that's an article or a post or an image or a video. And that hash basically gets used by everyone else, all the other major platforms. And once it's detected, then that gets taken down automatically. So they're trying to do the same thing right now with disinformation. It's really tricky though. There's some things that are black and white, right? So saying, so especially when it comes to medical stuff, so saying anti-malarial meds are the cure for COVID, right? That is clearly disinformation, and that gets flagged. And that's something that a lot of the platforms will share their content. So they have this, the database essentially to do that. But for everything else, especially when it's more political in nature, that gets done manually. So they will actually have fact checkers on the ground who are fluent in the language of the content, and they understand the context, and then they will actually go in and do it, which is, one of the reasons why, for example, in English, disinformation gets taken down a lot faster than, we do a lot of work in Cambodia, and because they just don't have fact checkers in Khmer who understand the context.
Thank you. Is that clear, Mr. Joshua Chen? Do you have any further follow-up question?
I was asking about the Twitter community notes. So the idea is not to have the platforms or group of platforms delete content that they deem disinformation. The idea is that anybody, not employees or government officials of the social media platform, can respond to a video and says, this context is not right. This is an old photo. Did you find it helpful? So you're empowering the users rather than making the decisions on deleting or flagging to the companies themselves. I would ask how you could compare those two options.
Gotcha. I don't know enough about what Twitter is doing right now. I know that it's a thing. I don't know who on the back end at Twitter is reading this, especially given the fact that they don't have a public policy team anymore or a comms team.
Thank you. Any question from other participants on site, online? Yes. There is a question in the chat. Okay. Could you pass the? Okay. This is a question from one of our colleagues from Mavindo, which is the Indonesian Anti-Defamation Society. From Ibu Sukma. Okay. Talking about AI being used to create misinformation, can AI also be used to overcome the problem of spreading misinformation? If so, how does the AI work, and how is the concept of truth or true? It's truth integrated into AI to assist users in assessing the level of truth and reliability of the information they receive, especially in emotionally charged situation. So it's about some kind of a tagging the level of truthness. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. So AI can be used as a tool to help. However, it is still ultimately the human that needs to make the decision. So let me just expound on that. So AI can be used to detect something like a deep fake, what we consider as synthetic media, right? And they can flag it as like, oh, this was not an authentic photo. And in fact, Photoshop was used to create this or another software. That's pretty easy to do. And OpenAI itself is actually working on something similar to that right now. But in terms of assisting the users in assessing the level of truth and reliability of the information, that unfortunately, like, you still need a human to do that. AI cannot do that as of right now. One of the reasons is because we talk a lot about truth, but a truth is different to everyone. And it has almost nothing to do with the intent to deceive or not to deceive. If you ask a cognitive neuroscientist, why an event happens, there are, let's say, 3 people who are witnesses to that event. Those 3 people are going to have different interpretations of what just happened. And to each one of them, that's the truth, right? I mean, something happened, but the way that they're interpreting it is very much also based on their past experiences and traumas and all these other things. And so it's going to be slightly different for every single person. And you take that to a more emotionally charged, situation, it's just much harder to rely on it. And so when people say, what is truth? Sometimes that's just very hard for a machine to say, yes, that is 100% the truth. I'm obviously not talking about, there are things that are just facts, like the sky is always going to be blue, right? But when it comes to more nebulous and more nuanced concepts, you definitely need people and NGOs and nonprofits to actually do that work.
Thank you. Another questions. I just read the question and I try to understand it. Do you agree that the AI innovation is limited by global rules? So, and if so, has there been any concerted effort internationally to regulate the use of AI and to prevent it from being used for disinformation?
Yeah, so there are a couple of really big international initiatives out there. The first is Partnership on AI. And so it's a consortium that was created by a bunch of nonprofits, civil society organizations, the private sector, and increasingly now the government's also trying to be a part of it. And they're trying to create global rules and principles for AI and their various uses as well as their development. The UN, obviously, as an international body, they've been trying to put out guidance, and they have a couple of frameworks out there already too. So if you just Google that, you will find it. But there's not like a single, like, here's our global strategy, like the way that we have for other things. And a part of the reason is because some people have different opinions on the values of the internet. So should the internet be open and free, or should it belong to the government itself, right? And that is causing a lot of friction in terms of the implementation of these AI principles.
Yes, thank you, Evanna. There is another question. This from Abi Besman. He's from Pajajaran University and also works for Kompas TV. Kompas is one of major media in Indonesia. What is your perspective on the concept of data monopolies that serve as the foundation of AI? Are there alternative ways to prevent these monopolies from becoming instruments to control other countries by the data owner?
That is an excellent question. I personally think that, yes, data monopolies do exist, especially by the big tech companies who we give so much of our data to. But a part of it is we do it freely. They're not forcing us to give them our data. We all signed on to Facebook, right, years ago because we wanted to be connected to other people. And we knew that nothing is free in this world. And so in exchange, we're giving them our data. And people will keep on doing that. And until someone actually puts a stop to it, like they're just going to keep on taking our data and selling it, and et cetera. And so I do believe that, ultimately there's going to be a backlash just because the people are not going to be okay with that. But as of right now, I don't think there are actually alternative ways. The closest that we come to sort of the blockchain community on trying to get around a lot of these big tech companies, but most people in this world are not willing to go through that much trouble and inconvenience.
Okay, thank you. There is one online participant that raised his hand, Pak Odi.
Yes.
Yes, Pak Odi, can you give your question?
Yeah, my name is Odi Nandan Rodiana. I'm from West Java. I'm a prospective teacher student. I'm asking for information. Does AI threaten education? Now there are many students who often the chat GPT, it is threatened or not. Thank you very much.
Did you get the question, Evanna?
I did not. Do you mind
Pak Odi,
repeating it?
bisakah diulangi mungkin dalam bahasa Indonesia, nanti saya bantu supaya lebih jelas suaranya.
Oh, ini apakah chat GPT itu gangguan buat pendidikan? Apa enggak? Mau nanya gitu, Pak. Sekian.
Oh, okay. Yes, Evanna, he wants to know your opinion whether ChatGPT is what you call that, disruption or opportunities in the education sector.
I think both. It really depends on how you're using it. I think ChatGPT has forced a lot of teachers to update their curriculum, which especially for a lot of people who have been teaching exactly the same thing for 20, 30 years, they realize that they can't ask, for a book report on, I don't know, the Great Gatsby or another piece of literature, because you can now just, use a system like ChatGPT to do it. And that instead they actually have to be more proactive in asking questions that are not rote memorization, but more focused on critical thinking that a machine can't do. And so that, I think it's great for the education sector and for the students. It's a lot more work for teachers, and it's disruptive. It's disrupting systems, and most countries' education systems are based on rote memorization right now. And so that, I think that's like the push that they needed. Not sure how that plays out politically with everything else that's going on culturally, etc. But I do think that it is a force both for good and also for bad, because if the students don't already have a lot of critical thinking skills, they can't even evaluate whether or not an AI system is giving out hallucinations as answers.
Okay, thank you, Evanna. There is another question from Patimura University, from another island, island of Sulawesi, talking about deepfake, where people can make lies that harm some people, such as changing people's faces in obscene videos, which most women are victims of. You also said that AI can detect those lies. Doesn't that mean AI can also create undetectable lies?
Yeah, I mean, so it's this, race essentially, right? Of like, okay, we're going to create something that can detect something's done by an AI. And then so then now that we know how they're detecting it, we're going to go around it. And I think that's always going to happen, regardless of the technology that we're talking about, whether that's AI or, a child who's trying to figure out another way to go around his or her parents' rules, right? But you're absolutely right. And it becomes a circle. And what, I'm personally afraid of is that the speed of creating that bad or obscene video is going to be a lot faster than the speed that the AI can actually detect it.
Thank you. Is there any question from the on-site audience? Oh, okay. There is a question from the MC. Can someone get the wireless mic?
Thank you, Ms. Evanna, for the presentation. I really want to know, so in some case, don't you think that AI can actually make decisions better with dignity compared to humans? For example, you mentioned earlier that humans have emotion, whereas AIs, they don't. So in case, I'm sure this is not the case in probably the US, but in Indonesia, when we're applying to jobs, we're asked to submit CVs or resumes with our pictures in it. And although I know that our HRM persons are trained to actually avoid those biases, but we're humans after all, we're still gonna have those biases unknowingly. So in those cases of daily encounters, don't you think that AIs are actually more capable of making decisions without those biases and with more dignity? Thank you.
That's a great question. If the AI was created with the intent of being fair, I think the answer is yes. But based on what we have seen so far with the use of AI in something like the hiring process or the recruiting process, it has not been successful. Amazon was the first one to actually try to use it. And then what they realized was that because the AI was created with humans and AI is using past performances to try to predict, who among the new recruits is going to be the most successful at landing this job and at performing this job. It actually came with the same biases. And so instead of having the one bias of looking at a picture, right, and deciding someone's value to the job based on their appearance. Instead, what the AI did was it was starting to look for names. And so Amazon did this experiment in the US. And so they actually found that with the system, instead of using pictures, people with white sounding names got more offers, got offers that they should not have gotten. than people with foreign sounding names or Black sounding names. So it was actually stereotyping another kind of bias instead. And so there are a lot of different inputs that you have to understand when it comes to the training data sets and things like that, to make sure that the AI, that you understand the limitations of AI. I'm never going to say like, no, we should not use AI, because that is basically trying to say, no, we should not use electricity, right? Like, it's been developed, it's going to keep on developing. But just as we, turn off the light, where we dim the light to help with our eyesight, or we'll wear blue glasses, we also need to know the harmful effects of AI and try to mitigate that.
Okay, thank you. And because of time, I have perhaps this might be the final question for you. Has there been any efforts in the US to prepare or to anticipate the use of AI in disinformation, especially nearing the election season? Because next year, the US and in Indonesia, we will have election season. And for us in Indonesia, we have learned from previous election, there were already so many disinformation, even without the AI. What would we have to prepare with the emergence of AI, and if you have specific cases? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. I feel like my colleagues at the U.S. consulate probably have a better answer than I do. So Josh, if you want to chime in, feel free. But the way, so in the US, because of our First Amendment of freedom of speech, we cannot regulate disinformation coming from Americans. There are a lot of concerns about foreign malign influence coming in. And that is something that the government is actively tracking. And they're doing a lot of education, not only at a federal level, but also with the state and the local election workers to make sure that they understand. Because we've had previous histories with Russia, China, Iran, etc., trying to influence specific votes, right? And so in that case, that becomes something that the US government needs to work on. And I believe that the agency responsible for that today actually just released a new initiative on disinformation around the election. But every country is different. Indonesia does not have the First Amendment the way that we do. And so in other places around the world, we do see the governments coming in a couple months before the election and trying to regulate disinformation. Or they might just turn off the internet altogether a couple days before the election and a couple days after.
Oh yeah, that happened in several countries already. Well,
yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Evanna, for your insights in the topic of AI and disinformation. We really appreciate your expertise here. And before I will hand over to the MC, but for the online participants, could you please stay online, because we will have a group photo session for the on-site participants, and there will be something to do for the online participants while you are waiting for us taking group photo. Okay, back to the MC.
All right, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much again for Mrs. Evanna and our moderator for today. What a truly spectacular first session we just had. I truly listened to whatever she said, and it was really relatable to what I did in my college years. Well, I'm still in college anyways. And now, as mentioned, we will have a photo session together with all the participants, as well as all the personals from Petra Christian University and the U.S. Consulate General Surabaya. So the participants on site, please do stand up and scoot together closer to the middle while giving the middle space vacant. And to the participants online, please do turn on your cameras. So please together stand up and scoot closer, but leave the gray area in the middle vacant for the cameras. Okay, and while we're waiting to settle, a Mentimeter has been shown on the screen. So for the online participants, please pin your regions or origin. It may not be as precise, but we'd love to know how diverse our audiences is today. So where you come from, you can just pin. If you're from overseas, please pin on the overseas box. Just second guess where your island or cities is. It's not as precise, but we can still do it. For the one at the back, please scoot a little bit more closer to the center of the room. From this side also, please. A bit more to the center. For the one at the back, slightly a bit more. I'm really sorry, slightly a bit more. No, sir. Oh, okay. If you're okay, so for the one at the back, if you can just
Saya pakai bahasa Indonesia aja ya, Bapak Ibu. Yang tengah tolong dikosongkan. Kalau yang di tengah bisa menunduk aja atau duduk di bawah. Kalau enggak, Ibu-ibu bisa masuk ke yang depan ini. Yang bagian belakang bisa mepet lagi ke tengah karena enggak muat.
together. For the online participants, again, we'll have a photo shoot together. Right now, we'll have our comedy screenshot the display. So please turn on your cameras if you haven't, and I'll count down for the comedies. All right, please set your camera on. Because we have several pages, please be patient with us. For the first page, we're gonna count down 3, 2, 1. Okay, for the second page now, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're done with the photo session for the online teams. Thank you very much for the patience with us for the photo sessions, but unfortunately, the picture we've just taken marks the end of our first session. But worry not, as our following sessions are guaranteed to be just as amazing as the first one. Before that, we would like to once again express our deepest gratitude to Mr. Joshua, to Mrs. Daria, and to our speaker, Mrs. Evanna, and to every other colleagues from the U.S. Consulate General Surabaya on this